All right, welcome to SMP's Webex Wednesday. I am Katie Shaw. I'm an Adoption Services Trainer with SMP, and I am glad you've joined us for our session today. Our focus today is an introduction to Webex Events, and that is what you're participating in right now. So you will get kind of a two-sided look, both the host or presenter and participant view all in one. First up, our agenda. So what are we going to look at today? We're going to take 20 minutes to walk through the information that's itemized on the agenda, and then 10 minutes for your questions at the end. You may use the chat or raise your hand to let me know you have a question, and we will unmute you if you use the hand raise, and you can ask the question to the group. So Webex Events is a really robust application, and we could easily spend several hours discussing the details of each item on the agenda, but we only have 20 minutes. So if you have additional questions or would like more in-depth training on Webex Events, feel free to contact SMP and we will be happy to work with your organization. All right, so that is our agenda for the next 20 minutes. And first things first, let's review why we would want to use Webex Events, okay? So Webex Events allows up to 3,000 attendees, and this is a big difference from what our normal Webex meetings will handle. Webex meetings will handle up to 1,000 participants. So versus that 3,000 with Webex Events, you might be able to do like an all hands meeting or something like that by using Webex Events. The audience in a Webex event will primarily be receiving information, okay? So you would not set this up for something where you want a lot of collaboration, a lot of brainstorming, a lot of teamwork. Typically, this is going to be one-way information. I am giving you information, maybe a different panelist is giving you information, but we're generally not hearing back from our audience. With Webex Events, you have the option to include more presenters. So I could very easily configure 3 or 4 different presenters to be sharing information during a single session. As you may have noticed, if you've attended Webex or Webex Wednesdays in the past, the participant list is hidden. So although there are multiple people on an event, the participants do not have visibility to that list of attendees. Okay, so this is useful for instances where you might have multiple customers attending a same webinar or a same training session, and you don't necessarily want everyone to see exactly who and from what company there are people in attendance. So Webex Events is a really good way to manage that. And lastly, there is a lot of information that you can obtain before, during, and after the Webex event that can be exported into Excel and used to create targeted marketing and sales strategies. And we'll look at how to do all of this in our session today. So scheduling an event. If you're planning your Webex event, you need to think about a few things. You need to think about who will be fulfilling these various event roles. So we have the ability to assign a host, we can assign presenters, panelists, polling coordinators, and our attendees. So you can have all of these roles filled as you're scheduling and delivering your event, or if you have a kind of a one-man show going on like we do here for Webex Wednesday, I'm a lone wolf. I am the host, I am the presenter, I'm the panelist, I'm the polling coordinator. I rely on you guys to be the attendees. So it is possible to conduct a Webex event with a single person. However, you do have that flexibility of inviting other people to come in as subject matter experts or special guests, okay? So do note that in a Webex event, attendees who with audio are always joined as muted. So everybody is automatically muted when they join a Webex event. This is awesome because I'm sure we've all attended some sort of meeting where there's one or two people who just keep taking themselves off mute or who aren't really familiar with the application and are uncertain how to mute themselves. With Webex Events, that takes that variable away, and only the host can unmute attendees. Okay? All right, so we're going to look at my Webex site so that you can understand some of the options you have when scheduling a Webex event, okay? So my advice is to kind of, let this information wash over you, get a feel for how the site is laid out, and then when you have time on your calendar, go in and schedule your own test event, okay? So try out different settings, check different options, and figure out what's going to work best for you and for your organization. Creating and using a test event will let you experience holding an event without the pressure of having an audience, okay? So I'm going to stop my slideshow right now. And then I'm going to bring up my Webex site. Okay, so here we are. I am looking at my Webex site. And if I wanted to schedule a Webex event, down here on the bottom left, I see I have three options: training, events, and support. I am going to use Webex Events. In here on the left-hand menu, I see under Host an Event, Schedule an Event. So this is the link that I'm going to access, and here is the information I need to complete. Now, I'll be very honest with you, I do not use every single feature and every single option when I am scheduling an event. You can kind of play with it and see what works best for you. I'll show you what I do. So, first things first, online event, we leave that as a default. The event name, we do need an event name in order to move forward with scheduling our event. So let's say I'll schedule this out as Welcome to SMP Adoption Services. I have the ability to make registration required. So if I wanted to make sure I knew who was going to attend this event beforehand, I would choose required. If I didn't care who attended the event, I just needed that maximum 3,000 capacity, I could uncheck this, and then anyone who had access to the link could join without registering for the event. The event password, you can customize the event password if you'd like to. You don't have to. Anyone who pre-registers for the event would not need that event password as long as they sign in with the email address they used to register. Down below, the start date and start time, these are obviously the most important pieces when you're scheduling any kind of meeting. So you want to choose your day, choose your start time. AM and PM are little radio buttons over here on the right. And then down here, we have the estimated duration. So we could do a very brief meeting. We could do up to as short as a 15-minute event, or we could create something longer using the drop down over here on the right, or on the left, I'm sorry. Once you've assigned a time and a duration, then you're going to choose your time zone. So I'm based here in New York State, and most of our attendees are going to be East Coast folks based on our customers. But if you had customers based across the continent or across the globe, you could use these drop downs to automatically kind of pre-select their time zone for them so that they can easily reference that when they look at the registration information. So if I wanted to choose, if I said, oh, there's going to be people from Chicago joining, or that central time zone, you could choose that from your drop-down list. Attendees can join 0 minutes before the scheduled start time. So that's the default for all Webex events. I change it so that attendees can join 5 minutes before. That still gives me a little bit of time to get comfortable, make sure I have my presentation set up, my video is working great, but it allows our kind of our early birds to get settled in as well. Down below, you may have different options in your Webex, in your conference type dropdown. Use what you are most comfortable with. We use Webex Audio here at SMP. And then there are some options here for our attendees as far as what they're going to dial when they call into the meeting. Another feature that you can enable or disable here is the entry and exit tone. So if you know that you're going to be having hundreds and hundreds of people join your WebEx event, it may become annoying to hear the beep or to have people announce their name every single time they join the event, okay? So for a large event, or if you just don't want that beeping, if you're recording the event, that might become a distraction. So you can choose no tone. Underneath that, you have the ability to write a description. So keep this brief, a line or two, about what your WebEx event is going to focus on. If you want to, you can upload a picture about the event description. So if I was doing a Welcome to Adoption Services, I could upload a picture of our SMP headquarters, and then I could upload a picture of myself as the presenter or as of my team, okay? Event material, if you wanted your attendees to kind of have some information front-loaded before they join your webinar, you could upload a presentation, a document, any sort of information you want your participants to have ahead of time. So maybe you're doing a training event and you want your attendees to have the workbook that they're going to be, writing reflections in and answering, brainstorming questions, and you wanted them to have it ahead of time. Perfect. Put it in the upload, and then they will have access to that once they register for the event. Down below, we have some links that we can add, and we have the ability to add a post-event survey. So you can, create a survey so that when your attendees leave the event, they immediately get that pop-up to answer feedback questions about the event itself, or you can add a destination URL. So if you use a third-party survey software or survey site, you could direct attendees to that location. Okay. All right, so down below, let me see. At the very bottom, we have the ability to send reminder emails. So if you wanted to send a reminder email to your attendees, say half an hour before the session starts to, get everybody in the right mindset, maybe add some information about, make sure you have your workbook and you've completed sections 1 and 2, those kind of things, you could set up that reminder email here. Follow-up emails, including thank you and absentee. So if you wanted to put the recording of your event somewhere that people could access it, go ahead and add that information to your follow-up email. All right, so then once you have picked your date, your time, all of those important things, you can schedule your event, okay? Oh, we changed this end time here. All right, sounds good. And then you'll be prompted to send emails to either the host, the panelists, the attendees, or the vendors. I'm not going to send any invitations right now because this is a test, but you could, once you've scheduled the event, send emails to maybe your host and your panelists to make sure that they have an early heads up on when the session has been scheduled, okay? All right, so I'm going to pause sharing, and I'm going to relaunch my PowerPoint here, and we are going to jump back into our presentation. Okay, just a second. All right, so as a host, I see this interface when I launch a WebEx event, okay? I'm not sharing any content. I am just, maybe I'm waiting for my participants to arrive, and this is the interface that I am looking at. So it looks very similar to the interface that you see when you host a WebEx meeting or when you attend a WebEx meeting. Your controls are at the very bottom of your screen. So your WebEx controls, the icons remain the same. So you should be familiar with those if you have used WebEx meetings in the past. Let's review the panes that I have active on the right side of my WebEx event. Starting at the top, I have my participants pane. This is the pane that I see because I am the host of this event. And I can see that I have attendees. I have 2 attendees in this particular meeting. If I wanted to view who they are, I just go ahead and I click View All Attendees. And that's going to pop up a box that looks something like this. So here I see my two attendees, test user 1 and test user 2. And because this was a test, you know, there's just a couple people here. It keeps it simple. In my attendee list, from left to right, I see if the person is attentive to the presentation. So that exclamation mark here shows me that the person is, they're clicked into the Webex event screen. They don't have their email open up on top of it. They're not clicked over on a second monitor that they may have doing something else. So you can monitor attentiveness. Next to that, you have how they joined audio. So these folks here, they didn't join using any audio because it was me on my iPad sitting in my office, so I didn't want to have a lot of feedback. You can see the headset. You could see a phone handset, or you could see a video device, depending on how your attendees joined. Then you'll see the name that they registered with, and if they have any feedback. So in Webex Events, your attendees have the ability to give feedback, and we can look at that in a separate training session, but do be aware that there are multiple ways for your end users to interact with you. Next to that, you'll be able to see that everyone is muted. So none of my attendees have audio, so no one is muted, but in that far column, everybody would be muted by default. Okay, so if you wanted to have an open mic during your presentation, you could very easily enable that from this list. All we need to do is click on the person that we want to unmute, and then on that right-hand side, you see the options that are available. So if they had audio, I would be able to click on unmute, or I could make them a panelist, or I could expel them from the meeting, okay? So just be aware that you have to click on the person that you want to take action on, and from there, your available choices will become dark gray. All right, so middle pane on the right-hand side of my interface is chat. So chat works exactly the same way as it does in a WebEx meeting. There's a drop down on the kind of the bottom quarter of your chat window. And if you were to expand the drop down, you have a few more categories. Okay, so we have the ability to message specific roles, or we could address groups of people, all attendees, all panelists, or all participants. Let's say that you wanted to address a specific attendee. So to address a specific attendee, we click on Select an Attendee. We get a box that pops up that has all of our attendees listed in it. Now, if you have a large event, you could use that Find field up at the top. You could type in their first name, their last name, and that information is going to be based on how they registered, and then click Find, and your list will refine. So click the person that you wish to message, and then from there you'd be able to message that person directly. Okay. So once you select your user, over on that right-hand side, you're going to be able to type your message down here, and you'll see their specific name in that drop-down field. Okay. And then lastly, we have our question and answer pane. So question and answer is something that can be used to kind of privately ask questions of maybe the host or the presenter. Maybe a person is having technical difficulties and they need a little bit of help getting connected with audio. They can message the host and presenters kind of behind the scenes to ask those kinds of questions. So first thing that we see here is we have test user 2 sending in a question. And their question is, what is the tech support phone number? Great. So maybe this is something that they need. It's not something that you normally cover in your presentation. You can choose to answer them now. You could choose to answer them later, or you could dismiss the question altogether. And let's look at how we do that. So first things first, I need to click on the question that I want to answer. If I have lots of people in my session, I may have lots of questions coming in. So I'm going to click on the question, and then I can enter in the information that I want to send to them. So this is where you get to make your choice. You can either send this, which makes the question and your answer public to all of the people in the Webex event, or you can choose to send privately. In this case, I'm going to choose to send privately just so you can see what happens. If I choose send privately, I get a new interface, and on that interface, I have some options. So the radio buttons allow me to answer privately, which is the default, defer the question, or dismiss the question, okay? You can also edit your response in here. So if I look at that and I go, okay, you know, maybe I want to put the hours that tech support is available in that field as well, go ahead and modify your response. Then you'll be able to click send, and from there you will, you know, your end user will get that, your attendee will get that question answered privately, okay? All right. So let's say that I'm the presenter in this event and I want to start a poll for my audience. I don't see my polling pane on my interface right now, but I can fix that. So first thing I want to do is check my More icon on my Webex controls. That's the 3 dots on the bottom there. If I click my More icon, this is what I'm going to see, and you'll see that I do have some options available. But in perusing that list, I'm not seeing the ability to start a poll. All right, well, don't panic. There are more options. First thing I need to do is navigate back to my main menu. All right, so my menu is up at the top, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click on View. Okay, so I clicked on View, and then I'm going to click on Panels. Next step is Manage Panels. Once I click Manage Panels, I get a pop-up, and from here on the left-hand side, I see Available Panels. On the right-hand side, I see Current Panels. So now I know I didn't enable polling for this particular view, but I can fix it on the fly. So all I would do is click on Polling. I then click Add, and then polling would show up over here on the right-hand side. So that would pop up another box on the right-hand side of my host or presenter interface, and I would be able to then initiate any questions that I've either saved or that I manually type in to pose to my audience. Okay. All right, so additional configuration of your Webex event is available to hosts and presenters. So the first thing that we can do, if we wanted to kind of manipulate the interface a little bit, or some of the options that are available, we're going to click on the menu. And our event menu is up top. And we have the ability in here to, as a host or presenter, to start something called a practice session. So what is a practice session and when might it be useful? Well, a practice session is kind of like those backstage conversations you have with people at an event or at a presentation. So if I had you know, my whole team working with me on a large event, the 4 of us would be able to go backstage behind the curtain and have conversations and review our material and make changes without the audience seeing us or hearing us, right? So that's kind of, pay no mind to the man behind the curtain. That's what this is. You can kick off your event. You can start your event, maybe pose a question or set up a poll for your attendees to review. Then the host or presenter can come in and start a practice session, and that's going to allow anyone who's not classified as an attendee to go into a sub-event. Okay, this sub-event has separate audio and separate content sharing. So we can have a conversation as presenters and hosts that our attendees can't hear. We can share content, maybe make tweaks to our presentation that our attendees aren't going to see. Okay, So that allows you to kind of make adjustments on the fly and make sure everybody's on the same page regarding how you want the event to go. Once you are in that sub-event, you can return very easily back to your main WebEx event where your attendees can see and hear you with just a couple of clicks. Okay. Within the Events menu tab, you have options. So if we were to click Options, we get a pop-up. And this pop-up shows us all kinds of things that we can manipulate to impact the experience of both our attendees and of our presenters. So here we have the ability to review 3 different tabs. You have Communications, you have Content Sharing, and you have Import Mode. So for the purposes of time, we're not going to bounce through all 3 of those tabs, but like I said, set up a practice event for yourself or your team to make changes, see how it impacts the experience of your attendees and panelists, and then come up with kind of a template that works best for your group. So within each of these tabs, you have multiple options on how you can manipulate the experience for your individual events. But just make sure that once you have made changes, so if we were to maybe uncheck video, maybe we didn't want participants to be able to stream video or to show video in this particular event, we would uncheck our video box. Or maybe we weren't going to monitor attention tracking. We didn't care if people clicked over into email or other applications. We could uncheck that attention tracking box. The thing to make sure you do in order to apply these is to make sure you come down and click Apply. If you just click OK, it's not going to stick. So Apply and then OK is our workflow for event options. All right. Perfect. Okay, so after an event is over with, you get to breathe a sigh of relief as the host or presenter, and you can give yourself a pat on the back for a job well done. After that, you can do some data mining, and you can retrieve a number of different event reports from your WebEx site. And I've found that my post-event reports are available generally within 24 hours of the event. We'll take a look at what one of those looks like in just a second, but just in a nutshell, you're going to get information like the attendee's name, what time the attendee joined and left the event, attendee attentiveness, company name, things like that. So let's take a look. I'm going to pause my sharing one more time, and we're going to head out to the internet and look at my WebEx site. Okay, so here we are. This is my WebEx site. Once again, you have a WebEx site as well if you have a WebEx login username and password. On my site, I am going to go to my WebEx events, and then at the top I have a My WebEx tab. Okay, so that is where all of my reporting is going to be. If I click My WebEx, I'm then going to go to My Reports. Inside of My Reports, I see a huge list of reports. They are divided up by platform. So at the top, I see my WebEx meetings. In the middle, I see my WebEx events. So for my purposes today, we're going to show you an attendance report. So if I click Attendance Report, this is only going to be accessible after an event has taken place, okay? From here, you can kind of filter out the results that you want. So for the sake of time, I'm going to say, yep, a month is great, and then I'll choose to display my report. Here I see all of the events that I have hosted in the last 30 days, and the one I did most recently was a practice event yesterday to make sure that everything worked out the way I thought it would. So here's my practice event. I'm going to click on it, and I get a hard-to-read index of information, but I have the option to export that information over here. Okay, so if I export that information, it opens up in an Excel document by default. And in here, I have a ton of information available to me about the people who attended my Webex event. So you can use this information to your benefit. You know, you get to see the person's name. I have test user 1 and 2. You get the email address of the people who attended your session, what time they joined, what time they left, how many minutes they attended, and then their attention, right? So if they were attentive, they were not clicking around in other applications, then you would see, you know, high numbers over here in these columns. So all kinds of information available inside of these reports, okay? All right, so pause this real quick. We'll head back to our presentation. All right, and then we will just do a quick review. So you can fill all of the roles that are available to you using your Webex event scheduler, or you can kind of run it as a, you know, as a solo host. Totally up to you. The more attendees you have, I have found that it is better to have some help. Okay, so if you're going to have a really large event, it is really helpful to have somebody who is there to run your polls, somebody who's there to answer questions on the fly while you are doing the presentation, okay? So your registration options are available within your Webex site. Again, play with it, see what works best for your organization. And running a test event is not going to, you know, it's not going to mix anything up. If you have yourself and your 4 iPads and your 2, you know, spare computers in your house running an event, it will work perfectly as long as you have the bandwidth on your network. The in-meeting Webex controls remain. So your list or your bubble down there at the bottom of your Webex interface, they remain the same, they function the same. The options are generally pretty similar to what you're used to in a Webex meeting, with a few exceptions. And then your post-event reports and information is available on your Webex site again, okay? So with that, I don't see any questions that have come in. I will open it up in just a second for questions, so bear with me. Up next, our next Webex Wednesday will be next week, Wednesday the 20th from 11:45 to 12:15, and our topic is an introduction to Webex Teams. So if you would like information on these or any other webinars presented by SMP, be sure to follow SMP-Corp on LinkedIn for registration information. Thank you so much for your attention, and enjoy the rest of your day.